What's going on, everybody? So we are back again for another Rapid Fire Wednesday, where we do rapid fire features, rapid fire fun, rapid fire coaching, and rapid fire content. I'm really excited today. The individual that I have joining us, and I'll bring him up here in a few minutes. But I wanted to start real quick by just commenting on how sometimes we get the pleasure of connecting with someone and it's just instant. You feel it. You absolutely know that this person is real, they are authentic, and they are everything. You know, a lot of the things that I've talked about, so many people have said to me, Brian, like, how do you know when you're your most authentic self? And it comes down to a really basic thing of really energy. How do you feel, right? We also talk about like when you know someone wants something from you versus when you know they want something for you. We've all been in those situations where we meet somebody and right out of the gate, our wall, our armor goes up because we know that they have an agenda. They have an initiative. They have something they want from us. And so it just makes us feel yucky, right? And so I call it that way because it's very real. And I also know, and so many of us understand that when we are aligned with those individuals that operate at the same vibration and frequency that we are, those that are open, those that are vulnerable and authentic, that instant connection is almost real. We feel safe immediately. We feel protected. We feel seen, understood, and we feel connected. And this individual that is coming on today, I got to meet about a month and a half ago. And we actually met through one of our other businesses, Combo Kong, which is where we actually really help people introduce who they are to the world and attract who they want into their world. And for good reason, he was very concerned about how does it come across from an authentic perspective. And so one of our teammates said, well, Ernie, here's the deal. If you're concerned about authenticity, you got to meet one of our founders. And so the conversation took from there. And I want to say it was maybe 30 seconds into our dialogue that we were like immediately already like celebrating, giving each other hugs virtually and high-fiving and knowing that we were going to be doing some cool stuff together. And so I'm really excited to bring Ernie Harker up today. He is a branding expert. And I'm not going to go too deep in his bio right out of the gate because I'm going to let him speak for himself on some of the cool things that he's done. But I also know that life is about 1, showing up, 2, how you show up, and then 3, where you show up. But the how you show up, the standard that you set for yourself is so critically important. And in this virtual world, I believe that how someone shows up here is a great representation for how they show up in the rest of their lives. And I'm not saying this to imply that any of you who haven't done this next level of intentionality are not a good person and don't show up well in your life. But those who take the extra level of care in their technology, in their studio, in the way that they can deliver how they're being received by the world says a whole lot about who they are. So I'm going to have Ernie come up and join me right now. I'm going to bring him into this. Oh, yeah. All right.
Hey, brother. So good to see you, man. I want a mustache so bad right now.
Well, you know, it's I've been told that this is, you know, one of my business partners calls this the trust stash. Oh. He says it reaches out and it just brings you in, right? So I don't know, man. I've been getting a whole lot of comment about my mustache. I have to tell you, it's funny. My wife a year ago, after 15 years of me believing that she hates mustaches and all facial hair, was like, hey, babe, you should grow a mustache. And I like laughed. I was like, you're kidding, right? And because every other time I've tried to grow one, she's like, you're like that Creepers 80 star, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. And so when it grew, I loved it, and she did too. And it's just kind of stuck. So, brother, man, I'm so happy you're here.
It's awesome. It's awesome. You know, when you were talking about the connection and that authentic connection that you and I had experienced, I was trying, as you were describing it, I was trying to figure out why that was. And one of the things that I kind of just came to the realization was because I'm at a situation in my life financially and comfortably where I don't need. And there's this, oftentimes, early on in my career, everything was about land the deal. And so giving time, giving creativity, giving ideas without any reciprocity was like totally foreign to me, because I'm like, I got to figure out how to make the bills, you know, to pay the bills. Yeah. So I feel like I'm in this comfortable place where I'm like, dude, if I can help you, awesome, because I don't need money from you right now, you know? So, but I'm in that safe place. I don't know if everybody is, though. And so that I think that's what helped me create a kind of a foundation of just being open and interested without being hungry. you know?
Yeah. And so by the way, Ernie, I think that's a really relevant point, because that is true in so many cases, right? Is that in so many areas where we believe that we need to monetize life to have the financial security to provide for our families and ourselves and all these things, right? We do these professions, these activities that we get paid for so often with that goal in mind.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that it's been interesting, because I've found that the more I can detach from that and the more I can attach to the people from a position of high intent to really focus on, like, what is it that I can do to help them, the money always takes care of itself anyway.
Yeah.
And so what I'm curious about is by the way, I experienced part of that trajectory myself as well. Early in my career, right? I needed things from people to be able to survive, right?
Yeah.
And I also didn't have the security and centered element in myself to be able to just recognize that money's an energy. It's a byproduct. It's something that comes and goes in our lives. We can attract it. We can push it away. And so it took me a long time to learn that. But what I'm curious about for you, since that's where you started, brother, is you're in now this position where you're giving back, right? You're helping other people. So if you were to talk to yourself from 20 years ago, or you were to give advice to an up and coming professional today on how can you build authentic relationships without allowing the money and the need to get in the way, what advice would you give?
You know, what's interesting is that if I would have given myself this advice, I was so headstrong, I wouldn't have listened to myself. So hopefully somebody out there is a better listener than I would have been. I was so desperate to be successful. I'm the middle of 9 boys. Like, I've got 8 brothers. And so you know, in that kind of an environment where my second oldest brother was 4.0 student, and he was the starter of every athletic team he was on. And I was this scrawny kid that was like, I just never felt like I measured up. And so this desperation to get attention and to get to be successful, to kind of make a name for myself, I was highly motivated to be really good at my craft. But at the same time, so that drove me to be like, got to build this business. But what I think is interesting is that every piece of business that I got was because I developed some type of a relationship with them. Yeah. I mean, every one of them.
Everyone.
And the best business came from the best relationships. And so I'm like, okay, if I were to give advice to anybody other than me 30 years ago, I'd say, like, you got to prime the pump. And prime the pump is like, see, I grew up in Idaho. And sometimes when you have a dry well, you know, you got to pump the pump, you know. But if there's no water in it already, it can't create vacuum to suck up the water where you have a whole bunch of supply. So you go, okay, I've got to put water in it to start to prime the pump, and then all of a sudden, it gets the good water from the you know, underground, and then you can do water all day. But you have to prime the pump first. You can't just start, I got to work really hard and suck out this water. It's not going to get anywhere. So prime the pump. What I mean by that is like one of the things I did for you that was really fun for me, it was very easy. I did that picture of you, and it didn't take me long. That's a talent that I've got, and I worked really hard to do it. It took me maybe 20 minutes. And oh my gosh, if I would have done that as a younger person instead of, look, this is my skill, I'm not going to give this away. It's like, no, man. Whenever we give a little bit with very little expectation, there is a universal law that says, okay, we've created a vacuum here. We've primed the pump here. The universe has to bring it back.
Yeah, man. And by the way, the picture that you referenced, I'm going to be posting on social this week.
Oh,
because
cool.
You moved me big time with that.
And
what I really, really appreciated with that is, again, that gave confirmation at an even deeper level for who I already was starting to know you to be. And the level of effort and intent, and you live by what you just talked about. There's a couple things that you just said I want to unpack a little bit further if we can.
Okay.
You know, you hit on something that was very, very relevant. You were one of 9, right? You had siblings that were always high performers. And so there was this element where you weren't really seen and understood, and you were often seeking validation through performance.
Oh, absolutely.
And I would tell you, Say that again.
Oh, absolutely. I'm still doing it today, though. I'm still doing it.
And so I think that's a really important thing to hit on, because, by the way, that is so true for so many of the world's highest performers. Yeah. There's some element of seeking validation, seeking connection, seeking love, seeking these things because of what we lacked or didn't gain early in our lives. And there's no vilification around that. That's objective and non-judgmental when I say it, but I myself had elements of that as well. And so what's interesting is that your environment created emotional triggers in you that created behavioral patterns that put you into environmental conditions that you continually sought to create validation through performance. And if we're not careful with that, you fall into a pattern of, again, seeking what you want from people versus what you want for them. And it's easy to not fill that. It's not easy to prime that pump when you're so focused on how do I get the confirmation for myself?
Yeah.
And so what I'm really curious about is at what point, and I know you said you still do it today, right? But at what point did you no longer feel that you needed the same level of validation that you did early in your career? Was that tied to money? Was it tied to other things? Like, where was that transition for you where you started to center into who you were, independent of what you were trying to become to match the competition and comparison with your siblings?
Good question. Yeah, like I said, I'm still experiencing it now, but I think my foot came off the gas just a little bit when I had a pretty significant taste of success with, I helped a company rebrand, a pretty big company rebrand, and they hired me on full time. I stayed there for 8 years. And when I left, I was able to cash out on some equity in the business that basically made it so that I didn't have to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. That gave me that flexibility. But what's interesting is that I still don't feel like I've met my potential. My wife will tell me all the time, she says, why can't you just be satisfied? Why can't you be content? And that's weird because I'm driven for that level of contentment, but I'm also terrified that if I become content, that I won't be as driven. You know? You do know. I can see it in your eyes, man.
I'm smiling, and I do know, for not only personal reasons, but I mean, dude, this is something that we deal with on a very, very deep level with many of the high performers that we coach. It's a very common pattern, and it's interesting. And so I was really curious for you, like, where that transition started to take place. I also want to hit on a different thing, because what you just said is real, right? We are constantly in this place where it's like you have contentment, you have comfort. For the first time in your life, you have all the things that you sought and desired, right? Yet there's still this perception, right, of the potential of loss.
Oh yeah.
And so I always find this interesting. And the reason I point this out is because for those of you that are watching, Ernie is a highly successful individual based on how the world defines success, particularly in professional and the financial realm, because of what he does. And do you mind if I say the company that you worked for? Because I want to give a little bit of credit to you.
Sure.
So you helped rebrand Maverick convenience stores, right? Yeah. And what's funny about this is since I've gotten to know you, I know a lot of people in the marketing and branding world. And I've actually brought your name up a handful of times because I'm going to make a few introductions for you very strategically with some of my close relationships. And as every single time I've told them, I was like, yeah, he was the man behind the rebrand for Maverick. Every single one of them is like, wow, right? They're in awe because they recognize the quality, solid brand that you built. And so you built this foundation for an organization while you were establishing to build a foundation for yourself.
Yeah.
And I find that very, very fascinating because part of your freedom came through actually allowing that brand to exist beyond you. And now you get to exist beyond the brand. So can you talk a little bit about that dynamic and how those were connected to each other?
Yeah, it's interesting. I started my career as an illustrator. I studied illustration at Utah State, at the University of Utah. I wanted to be an animator for Disney or something early on in life. And, as an artist, I think unless you are in the art world, you think art is a hobby, or a dead end type job how do you get money making art, right? I think most people think of fine art where you do paintings or drawings, then you put them in a gallery and then they hopefully they sell, and you're at the whim of market, the audience, right?
Yeah.
Well, in commercial art, it's like you're a cog in the wheel of a creative process where you help pre-visualize and help sell ideas based on your ability to visually render what's in the minds of creative directors or writers who don't have the hand skills to visualize it. So so early on, that's the idea, was to be this illustrator. And I was driven by compliments. Oh my gosh, Ernie, you're really good. I'm like, I didn't realize how hungry I was for that level of recognition, you know? And so what did I do? I would do it more. I would invest like ridiculous amounts of time in high school, you know, drawing. I would draw hands because they're the freaking hardest things to draw, right? I would draw faces and heads and anatomy and study bones and muscle structure. This is a high school student. And so I'm driven because I want people to say, oh, Ernie, you're really good. Oh, Ernie, oh my gosh, you're so good at this. Well, when you're always trying to satisfy somebody else, you become super vulnerable, because if someone says, hey, that doesn't hit the mark, all my value is just been like deflated, right? And so so the transition for the brand, to answer your question, when we started working on the Maverick rebrand, I was like 8 years into my business that I'd started. I had 8 people working for me. They were all really creative. We were in we did radio production, TV production. You know, we're mostly a creative production studio. And so really the rebrand started with creating ads for this convenience store, but they hated the whole cowboy Western theme that they had used for like 50, 60 years. They're like, we're done with that. Well, it's hard to develop a new ad campaign that's outside of the brand. And so we thought, well, we need to come up with a new ad campaign. Let's propose a different brand. And so we did a bunch of research, and totally pro bono at this point in time. They said, hey, we're interested in a rebrand. We want to see what you can do. We're like, no holds barred. We wanted to do something cool. So we did research to find out that people really didn't like going to convenience stores, except for when they were on their way to some kind of an adventure, like fishing or hunting or snowmobiling or snowboarding or skiing or whatever. And so we thought, well, what if we kind of branded Maverick as the place to go to start your adventure? And one of the guys came up with this tagline, Adventure's First Stop. And it wasn't me, you know, it was some other brilliant dude. And we're like, yeah, that's awesome. And so if Maverick became Adventure's First Stop, what would it look like? What would the advertising be like? What would the interior design look like? All those things started kind of gelling around a central, we called it a lens, a visual lens, a brand lens that said, if the lens is Adventure's First Stop, what does the other side of the lens look like? How does that inform the decisions we make in terms of architecture, design, marketing, audience, everything? And because we embrace that, we got a huge amount of success. And it was like gravity. Everything's pulling in to see that this thing is actually really working. And that fed my ego. Oh my gosh, I'm valuable here. Beyond just being an artist, I'm valuable as this director of a brand. And you know, when one of the owners of the company, who is your kind of boss, you know, that your client, saying, dude, you're crushing it, dude, you're amazing, you kind of start going, no, dude, he doesn't know who I am. Dude, I'm number 5 of 9 kids. I'm desperate to get. He's saying that I'm awesome, but he doesn't know the real me. I'm pretending. Do you find that a lot in high level people?
Imposter syndrome and shame are deeply ingrained in so many high performers. Mm-hmm. And so, it's absolutely the case. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense for you, in addition to a variety of different ways. Now, I want to give you a big compliment, though, because you were able to maintain something that many don't. Now, I know that you're a twin, So you're not only one of 9, but you're a twin. And so this idea of like being seen and understood, you literally have an identical twin. And it's like you're getting lost in the mix left and right around just the dynamics of your family. I mean, your parents, I guarantee, did everything they could to make each one of you feel seen and understood and connected and loved and cherished. But 9 and 2 identical twins, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
And you really just gave a perfect example of one of my favorite books is Mindset by Carol Dweck. And she talks about fixed mindset versus growth mindset, right? Fixed mindset is this idea that you are born with your own unique set of skills and that's all you've ever got. And you're going to be judged based on that for the rest of your life. Whereas growth mindset is you're born with your starting point set of skills and you get to refine, grow, and add tools to your skill set. But there's language, right, that literally suggests that as parents, teachers, employers, and coaches, right, for the kid that's in the fixed mindset in particular, it's like, oh my gosh, your art is so good, Ernie. It reminds me of Picasso. I can't believe that you're just so talented at such a young age. Now, here's what most kids hear in that. Oh, geez, if I don't continue to paint and make it seem as if I'm like Picasso, then I'm not going to be good enough to continue to do this. And so they stifle and they shut down their own performance. Whereas you said, I'm going to lean in and I'm going to learn. I'm going to practice. I'm going to get the reps. See, what we find so often too, and this is where I want to give you the compliment, man, there are literally people that I work with who have silenced portions of themselves for 20, 30, 40 years. So though you knew you wanted to go into art and though the path didn't look the way you wanted it to, you never lost connection with the thing that was your creative drive. Yeah. Whereas in so many cases, people who like writing, they like playing music, they like drawing, the world has told them you shouldn't do that. You should do this. You should be this. You should want this. And so they literally shut it off. Well, in your case, though you've dealt with imposter syndrome, though you've dealt with some of these things that so many other high performers have, what you never seem to have lost is your connection to yourself through creativity.
That wasn't because I was super confident in my ability. It was because it was the yarn or the string that kept me connected to value. Exactly. And I'm like, well, I just got to hang on to this string. If I don't hang on to the string and cut it, I'm lost forever, you know?
But really what I want to acknowledge though, my friend, is that yes, you're tying it to performance and validation, but it's also who you are. And so that string for you happened to be where you get validation, happened to be where you get success. And so your desperation for trying to climb that corporate ladder and pull yourself forward just also happened to be aligned with who you are because you are highly creative. And art is something that lights you up. It brings authentic energy to you. You love to draw. That 20-minute drawing that you did for me, it fills your heart. It fills your soul. That's what you literally love. And so
I do.
What I love about this is, yes, you may have gotten away from the intent of where you wanted to go, drawing for Disney and doing some of these different things, but you never lost that connection. Myself, I started to convince myself that I wasn't a creative person. I had literally put so many layers of armor around me in my world that I didn't believe I was creative. Now I'm a highly creative person. Now I'm creative in many different ways, but I had stifled that because I became who the world told me I needed to be versus focusing on who I am. And so at least in your case, who you were actually was the vehicle to also provide professional success. And in many ways, most people don't align that. So what I'm curious about though is most people start to lighten back up. That's where these midlife crises come from, right? Where people make dramatic changes in their lives and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I used to love to play the guitar. I'm going to start playing again, right? They re-tap into that creative element of who they are, which again, you didn't lose in entirety. But what I love about what you have done is that string that kept you connected is now also pulling you forward into a new initiative and desire to really be able to transfer your knowledge, your skill sets in a unique way to the next generation. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's one of the things that I love about you is that you never lost the connection to your creativity and you're now using that same string to pull you and others forward.
Yeah, I loved, like as a kid, I loved drawing. I mean, not only was it the source of a lot of self-confidence that came from that, it's like, oh man, you're really good at this. It was also cheap. Man, everybody can afford a pencil and a piece of paper. Like everybody can. Can you afford an electric guitar? Not everybody can afford that. Or a piano? Not everybody can afford that, but everybody can afford like a freaking pencil and a piece of paper. And so in my career, I started as an illustrator, but as you advance in leadership and stuff and responsibilities, you end up having to let some of that production go to other artists. And a major crossroads affected me when I'm hiring artists that were better than I am. And it's like, oh my gosh, my value was being the best. And now I'm seeing these guys are better than me. I mean, I had a whole team of guys that were just phenomenal. And what happened is, like, I would say like a 4 or 5 month period of kind of depression when I realized I'm not that good anymore, that the best anymore. But I was so in love with art that I was excited to come to work to see what my guys were working on and coming up with. I'm like, dude, you rock, man. This is awesome, man. It was a petri dish of creative overload. And so we're in there and we're complimenting each other. We love what each other does. Your own artwork, by the way, is never as good as other people see it. You're so critical of your own artwork. You see every mole and hiccup and whatever. But so when you're complimenting each other like that, it becomes this really fun, positive environment. And so I've lost that drawing connection. And so when I left Maverick a few years ago, I'm like, you know what? I would love to teach kids how to draw. And so I started this YouTube channel that started out like, I was watching my son, who was like 8 or 9 at the time, watching these really cringy videos of like goofy people. And so I started like, okay, I'm gonna play this character. Okay, I'm gonna do this real quick.
Yes, here we go.
Okay, guys. Hey, everybody, it's Sketchy. Let's draw something together. So this is my character. I had a lateral lisp, and I was like drawing stuff, and we're drawing really cool stuff, see? And so...
Oh, Ernie, I love you, bro. I love you, bro.
So it's like... But what was crazy is that... so I've done 100 and like almost 110 videos. But it doesn't have like a huge following. We got like 4,000 something, subscribers, and I get hundreds, maybe a few thousand views on my video. So I am not a success like a typical success. But boy, what a fun experience for me to be able to share my love of drawing and then teaching the basic principles of how a professional approaches drawing to young people. I had to change my voice, my lateral lisp, because I realized that like I was drawing stuff that was more advanced than the kids that were attracted to the weirdo. So I had to choose, like, do I keep the weirdo dude and reduce or lower the complexity of my drawing tutorials, or do I kind of lose the lateral lisp and talk a little more directly to like the 14 to 20-year-olds who are going, I really want to learn how to draw, and this weird guy is freaking me out. Yeah. So I did a little bit of improv. I did a little change there. So yeah, I think that's
hilarious. I love that, and I love that you're able to even put a character in place to continue to like bring the connection and attract different people. Yeah. You've referenced a particular word multiple times in different respects on our conversation today.
Yeah.
So how do you define success?
Oh my gosh, I used to define success as some kind of money. Definitely like money. Because I grew up with 9 boys. You don't have a lot of money. I grew up in Idaho. We would buy groceries at oftentimes I'd go with my mom to buy groceries at the what's it called? Where if the semi truck gets in an accident, they can't sell the canned goods and the boxed goods at a grocery store. So like the boxes might be broken, or the cans might be dented or whatever. So they bring it to this, I think it was called Parish something in Pocatello. But so we would buy a lot of items from there just to make our dollar stretch. So I've always been thinking about financial success as success. And I think as I reevaluate success now, because I have financial security, I feel like I can broaden my definition. And I think it's now I feel like much more about contribution of like, think about legacy. If I die and I'm a rich person, no one gives a crap. But if I can leave, like I started coaching my kids' soccer team because I don't want to teach soccer. I want to teach kids how to be better people, you know, and you learn a lot through sports that way, you know, like teamwork and discipline and stuff. Teaching kids how to draw. I love, like, if I can touch, and influence people that in a positive way with my enthusiasm, my positivity, you know, anything like that, then I think then I'm successful. So I'm less concerned about the dollars now because I have some financial security, and I'm more concerned now about just like you know, making the world a better, a more lighter, happier place, because the world we live in right now is getting darker. So what can I do to make people smile and feel good about themselves? So it takes a very conscious effort on my part to see the positive in other people, because positive and negatives in everybody. And it's so easy. I think it's the natural tendency for us to look at people and just complain and see the negative, and we post about the negative. We do negative reviews all the time. I'm like, man, that is a choice. It's not the way it is. The world is awesome too. So focus on the good. And if everybody focuses on the good, like news, I've stopped watching the news like
I did years ago.
Probably 15 years ago. I'm like, I'm no longer going to.
About 10 years ago, I stopped watching the news. I won't. I refuse to.
Why subject yourself to a predefined category of negativity that is sensationalized to make us all feel like crap to watch the news again? It's this cycle. I'm like, nope, I will abandon myself and cut myself away from any negativity, every negativity. Yeah.
You know, I think it's, there's a couple things that you just said that I want to expand on. You know, one of my favorite quotes actually comes from Ryan Holiday, "Obstacle is the way." And he says, "There is no good or bad without us. There's the event that happens and the story we tell ourselves about it." Mm-hmm. And in so many cases, even to your point, like good or bad people, good or bad situations, nice or wrong, it's like all these different things. And then to your also point, the amount of darkness that exists. You know, it's funny when you said that, I looked at the background that we're streaming off of today, and it's an entirely black background, and you're sitting in a dark room. But what's funny about that is like there is no darkness coming from either you or I. There's only light. And going back to even what you said in the very beginning around this idea of comparison, right? And how often this takes place with siblings, with people that we start to compete with in school and in life and in business. You can never exist in someone else's shadow as long as you always shine your own light.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
And what we know is that one particle of light can overtake over 1 million particles of darkness.
Yeah.
And so the reality of it is I genuinely believe, though there is a massive amount of darkness, there's also a whole lot of light that's starting to be shined, because there has been a general awakening for, I would say, society and business in a more conscious way than I've seen in the last decade, for sure, over the last couple of years. And so I'm really excited about what that's going to look like and where that's going to go. You know, you commented on legacy, and that was something I was going to ask you about. So I'm grateful that you brought that up. But I do have a different question for you. I've heard very, very often that that Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the world down. And I know that you have a personal relationship with him, have done some very specific work. And so obviously that's a little bit of joke. I love that there's a man that there is more jokes about than anybody on the planet, probably. And so I would just really like to know, you know, working with someone like Chuck, right, in that type of experience, you've dealt with a really large brand with Maverick and helped them rebrand and distribute. And then you've worked with somebody who has an established personal brand to help deploy other elements in their world. I'd love to know from your experience, whether it's working with a celebrity like Chuck or working with a major brand, what are the things that are consistent? What are the things that are different? And for so many people who are trying to establish a personal brand that also has some connection to business, what are the lessons that can be extracted from those experiences that they can apply in their lives?
Thank you. That's a great question. the brand, the way I look at branding is the outward manifestation, and oftentimes that's like with colors and logos and things like that. The outward manifestation of the values and unique differences within an organization or a person. Okay, so let's look at Maverick real quick. Maverick is a convenience store. They sell gas and hot dogs like every other convenience store on the planet. Okay, I think I looked at all the different products they sold, and I think it was like 98% of the products that Maverick sold were the exact same products that the guy across the street sold. So if you can't differentiate yourself in product as a business, how do you stand out? If you can't say, hey, our Snickers taste better, our Marlboros smoke better, like you can't talk about product. You have to talk about something different. And if there's nothing intrinsically different about the organization, you need to create something or magnify something. At Maverick, we magnified the value of kind of outdoorsmanship. Some of the executives kind of like the outdoors. Our customers certainly like the outdoors. And so we said, well, that's a point of differentiation that we can make, and it's authentic to the organization. So no matter where a Maverick goes up, it could go up in, in downtown Salt Lake City, or it could go up in, a metropolitan area. But it would still be adventure's first stop. And the adventure, the visual references we use of the logo, wood texture, and outdoor environmental textures and colors and stuff like that, that reinforces this adventurous brand. And so basically curating the visual and verbal language to represent your unique difference, to line that up, be very intentional about that. So as a personal brand, so my brand, it's very, very simple. My twin brother called me Earn Burn a long time ago. And I'm like, okay, how can I help people remember Earn Burn? Because it's not an easy name to remember. It's like so I thought, well, burn is something that people can get. So I just create a metaphor. And I'm like, so does burn fit me? I'm like, well, I ignite things. I'm excitable. I spark interest. So now I have vocabulary that references my Earn Burn that is who I am. I am an igniter. I'm someone who sparks things and flames things. I'm not a passive dude. Can I create a visual representation of that? Okay, so I have this Earn Burn like logo. Can you see that? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it's like Earn Burn. So yeah, so it's Earn Burn. So visually now, when someone sees the logo, they go, "Oh, I heard him speak, or I've talked to him, or I've seen his some YouTube article, whatever." And he is exciting. He's igniting. He sparks interest. It makes sense. And so working with what's interesting about Chuck Norris though is like, so his real name is Carlos, and it's really interesting to have.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really Carlos. So having a conversation with him when we're talking about marketing and stuff, we talk about Chuck Norris as a third party. It
would have to be.
Yeah, Chuck Norris is the action star.
Yeah, it's
Carlos
his brand. It's his actual brand, not who he is.
It is absolutely his brand. And what's interesting is that his brand, he on the screen, he plays a tough guy, badass, like I'll shoot him up, take name, we'll let God sort it out on the other side, but I'm gonna kill them all, right? But he is a very tender-hearted, very sweet, highly religious, God-centered person. And so is his wife. So in conversations, you see this deeply devoted guy to God and to his faith and to his family. Yet you see this persona on the screen of an action star, right? And his career, he's got the Midas touch. The guy succeeded at pretty much everything he tried. One quick story. This is hilarious. Okay.
Yeah.
Really quick. So one of his good buddies took his company public. This is when Carlos was a younger man, like in his 30s. And this is right when he was taken off with his action star persona. His buddy,
back when he was in movies with Bruce Lee, cracking knuckles and stuff.
There you go.
God,
Yep. So his buddy took his company public, but he loved to race speedboats. So the guy said, hey, so Chuck went to go and visit him and watch the race. But he goes, dude, my insurance company will not let me drive the boat. Will you do it? I've never driven the boat before. Dude, you can do it. It's, throttle, and so they go so fast. There's actually a navigator on one side. And so he's the driver, right? With the throttle. And he said, so he was telling me this story because there's this huge trophy at his house. I'm like, dude, what the heck is this? And he's like, oh, I got to tell you the story. There's a big poster next to it of him in the boat. But so he's basically like, I just pinned it. I just full out pinned it. And there were people like racers next to him that were like flying off. You know how the air guts underneath you and you hit a wave long? And he's like, I wanted to win. There was this mentality. It's like, I will win. And so people were, I think there was like 8 or 9 or so boats to start with. There's like 5 boats that crossed the finish line, but he was first place. He beat all these professional drivers because he was like, it was either all in 100%, no, like highly risky, but he was all in. And so the idea that he would, I don't know, this is a long story now, but the idea that he would drill for water for his irrigation for his fields in Navasota, Texas, where he would discover an aquifer that was like pure, pristine water from like 10,000 years ago. It's like, of course it would happen to Carlos.
Of course, Chuck Norris would do that. Yeah, of course.
Why wouldn't it be, right?
Yeah.
So he bottles the water and he sells it, and the proceeds go to his Kickstart charity, teaching kids how to do karate. The dude, he's not about. He makes plenty of money on Walker, Texas Ranger. That's where he gets his money, I think.
I'll bet. Yeah,
Walker, Texas
Ranger. A bunch of royalties coming in from that.
Oh, absolutely. So he does that. And so he's like, I just want to build a legacy of like, what can I do on a perpetual basis? Because he's getting old and stuff. He's like, what can I do on a perpetual basis to fund the thing that I'm most passionate about? And so getting a bottled water plant that has this water that's never ending and be able to provide proceeds to Kickstart kids. It's awesome. Just what an amazing guy. And he's doing it for the right reasons.
What's interesting is that what you just really hit on though, too, is I would tell you, although I've never met him, the aura and vibe I get from him just from a distance, and anybody that I've ever known who has met him, he is one of those individuals who's so centered in who he is that he operates from a position of so much faith that he can go all out because he's not guarded. He's not armored. Right. What we know is that when we hesitate in those high pressure, high risk situations, that's often when we make mistakes. Right. When we're gripping the club too tight, when we're overly stressed, when we're worried about losing. But when you're so centered and clear in who you are and you can truly just let things flow, it's incredible how the Midas touch actually can exist for a lot of high performers. But so often it's ourselves that get in our own way. And I think that that's, to his testament, something that he's always portrayed is an absolute centered clarity in who he is. And I feel like that person, though it's evolved over the years as he's had different experiences, his persona, and I'm not just talking about his characters, because everything we've talked about with that soft, gentle nature, I've seen him in interviews and different things. His persona has always been consistent.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of lessons in what you just said that were embedded in that story, because his ability to have the Midas touch, to know that he wanted to win and was so sure in what he was doing, he went all out, not worried about what the risk or ramifications would be. And he was victorious on the other side. Whereas so often it's those of us that are guarded, those that are holding onto the throttle because we're really worried about what if we hit that wave wrong, right? Or we make that mistake. Instead, he's like, no, I'm all out. And so I really like that story. I appreciate that. We're wrapping up real tight on time here, but I've really 1 or 2 other quick questions for you, and we'll wrap up tight.
Sure.
I would be an idiot if I had someone with your ability, your talent, and your eye here with me today that I didn't try to learn something from personally. Now, I've learned a lot from you through all of our dialogue, but I'm going to ask a specific question. You hit on personal brand. We're on a mission to impact 1 billion lives as quickly as possible. And I'm a big believer that as an individual, I am my brand. Yeah. Right. And so I focus on authenticity and a lot of different things, but we've got this No Limits brand. We have other pieces that we're continuing to build to surround around this collective impact of 1 billion lives, because it's not about Brian Bogert doing it. It's about us moving in the right direction to do it. In the little time you've known me, in the little time that you've witnessed and seen our brand, where would be any advice that you would give us on ways that we can continue to improve our brand so that we're actually meeting people where they are in a way that we can attract that type of impact into our world?
Awesome. Good question, because my introduction to you, Brian, was through Convocon, your social networking utility. And I didn't even know about your speaking or anything like that. Your mission of meeting a billion, of helping 1 billion people. So I'm like, that needs to be more, I guess, more front and center in what you do. It may be, but I just kind of came in through a side door.
Yeah, you came in through one of our other businesses.
Yeah. But I see your passion in it, and there's a term called force multiplier, like the Green Berets. They get embedded into enemy territory, and they use the indigenous people to recruit. So you get 4 or 5 Green Berets, and then they can create a whole like army, a whole platoon, right? Yeah. It's a force multiplier. And so you have a message that a lot of people resonate with. And you already do a great job of like, you're highly active in speaking and engaging. I'd be like, if I were you, I'd be on as freaking many podcasts I possibly could get on, because man, all their listeners can hear about your voice, and your stories and your passion. From a branding perspective, I haven't seen much other than, the Brian Bogert logo. Like other than the Brian Bogert logo, I don't know much about your, like from a visual branding.
Yeah.
So maybe throw that up on your wall behind you and remind people of their vision and mission. So that's my little critique.
Yeah, dude, I'll take it. Dude, again, I don't care about being right. I care about getting it right. At the end of the day, we're focusing on impact. And so, when I've got someone with your skill set, your ability, your experience, man, I always want to pick your brain.
Look at me. I've got the Earn Burn logo on my head. I'm like, every time, and it's conscious. I didn't have my hat on before. So yeah, so it's important that we don't undervalue, as business owners, as our personal brands. We do not undervalue, because we think, we just do this too much.
Yeah.
No. The reality is we can do it 1,000 times, and our audience might see it once or twice because they are not as engaged as we are with our brand. So we've just got to, like, every time. I think about like great brands like, what's his name? Gary Vee.
Yeah.
Gary Vee says the same thing all the time. Like, and yet we listen to him over and over again, telling us the same thing. He's not going, I got to come up with a new thing. You guys, from now on, don't produce content for social media. That's not going to happen. No. He's going to tell us tomorrow's conference, you know what you need to do? You need to post a ton of stuff for social media. Do content producers. Be focused and clear about your content. That's what he talks about every time. But the reason he's strong is because he does talk about it over and over and over again. He may be tired of the lyrics, but all the rest of us, we love that song.
Yep. Well, so what I love about what you just said is that it really leans into kind of the stage amplification theory that I deploy in a lot of what we do. If you've followed any of our content on any of our channels, right? I've been on, close to 400 podcasts at this point in the last 2 years. We're in the podcasting business as well. And so that is a whole nother piece that, again, you may or may not even know that I was a part of.
I know. It's like, I need to work on my podcast.
Yeah. And so there's a variety of different things that we are definitely touching. But what I've loved about what you just said is it's really about the amplification and the consistency, because we see it way more than our audience does. And particularly in the social realm, so much of our messages are compressed because of the way the algorithms work, that really only a portion of our audiences are seeing it. And so for the course of the last 6 months, for example, we've taken a lot of our long form content, cut it down into short form content, also done it alongside unique and creative content that wasn't actually on anybody else's platform. And we're integrating that, but we've been posting on average 4 times a day for the last 6 months. And what's interesting is that through that, nothing else changed. The messaging didn't change. The branding didn't change. Like the same things that we talk about for the last few years, what we're trying to amplify in the world hasn't changed. What did was the frequency with which we were putting it into the world. And in the very beginning, I'd be like, well, I don't want to bother the people that are in my audience. I don't want them to be seeing this stuff too much, right? There was a little part of me that imposter syndrome kicked in. I'm like, who am I to be putting all this stuff out? But at the same time, what I've realized is since we implemented that, along with a very structured customer journey for engagement, because we engage with those that engage with us on every platform. I send personalized messages to people. I actually want to build relationships. That's where we actually build these things. But it's only through the frequency of the content that we started to actually see the impact of our work. Because again, for every 100 people that might see something, you might get lucky if 1 or 2 comment or tell you that you were impacted by it.
Yes.
And so if we understand the numbers game, what I love about what you said, now, again, I took a lot of actually what you said in these subtle ways around my brand as well. So I'm already filtering that in intention. But really what it is that so often we just need to make sure that our brands are present in the world, omnipresent, so that people can access them wherever they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I got to do the same thing. I've got to do the same thing. It's like you are never done. You're never done with your marketing and branding. So just keep working on it.
Well, I say it's the same thing in yourself, right? Like there is no final destination. There's only constant evolution of self.
Amen, bro.
And you know, that's the reality. And one of my good friends, you'll appreciate this. In fact, he's someone I'm going to introduce you to. My good friend, George Bryant, his tagline is relationships beat algorithms. And what he also focuses on is that 99% of businesses don't have a marketing problem. They have a relationship problem, which comes full circle to what you even said early in the beginning. Yeah. And so at the end of the day, like this is really what it comes down to is we have to meet people where they are. I got to wrap up this show for today. Ernie, you dude are fire. I am so appreciative that we are connected. Everybody, he's at Ernie Harker on LinkedIn.
Yeah, please connect with me.
Down below for a free resource. Can we pop that back up here, team? Email me at earnburn.com, subject line Brian's buddy deal. And he's got a free resource that can help you with your branding, your thought process, all the ways that you can enter into the world, and you get to experience Ernie's brilliance. Ernie, do you have any closing words for us, brother?
Thank you for your friendship, bro. Seriously.
Well, dude, that's a two-way street. I'm looking forward to continuing to build this further.
Let's do this again.
We'll do it again. All right, everybody. I'm going to wrap up here. We're going to drop Ernie out of the room, and I'm going to leave us and close us out. So at the end of the day, relationships, so important. And I have often been saying recently that the reality of it is that as businesses, as leaders, as society, as individuals, we don't need any more strategy and tactics. Yes, they're critically important. Yes, that's how we'll leverage and scale our lives. What we really need is more human connection. If we center back into connecting authentically with those that we want to be doing this with who we want to be impacting, impact is inevitable. So till next week, everybody, be great and be you.